It's funny how many times a country will say one thing about their foreign policy, but then what actually happens is like totally different.
Yeah, especially when you think about like, okay, what are their real goals? Are they even trying to hide it anymore?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today we're going to like really get into that. We're focusing on some recent stuff in the Middle East. And like, it's pretty wild when you remember the stated goals, right?
Uh,
Like staying out of new wars and America first.
Yeah.
But then some of these things that have been happening, they really make you think.
Definitely makes you wonder if maybe there's something else going on, some hidden agendas.
For sure. And for this deep dive, we're going to be looking at Dave Smith, Part of the Problem, and Ron Paul Liberty Report, both from YouTube.
Yeah, this will give us a couple different perspectives on what's going on and what it all might mean for America's role in the Middle East.
So let's jump into it.
Okay.
To start with, Dave Smith on his show talks about how Trump has used some really strong language when it comes to Iran.
Yeah, he hasn't exactly been mincing words.
All right, like he said he'd bomb Iran with a level of destruction, the likes of which they have never seen before, if they don't make a new nuclear deal. That's some pretty intense stuff.
It really makes you think about the implications, especially when you listen to Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams on the Liberty Report. They brought up the dangers of that kind of talk.
Yeah.
It even compared it to when George H.W. Bush promised a humble foreign policy, which obviously we know didn't really happen.
Yeah, it seems like presidents always say that kind of thing when they're campaigning.
I know, right? Like, is it just something they say to get elected?
When Dave Smith, he pointed out that the U.S. intelligence community even said there's no evidence that Iran is building a nuke right now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They said that the National Intelligence Estimate, which basically means the entire U.S. intelligence community agrees, showed that Iran isn't working on a bomb. And that assessment started under Biden, no less.
So you've got Trump saying all this crazy stuff about bombing them, but like our own intelligence is saying they're not even doing anything wrong right now.
It just doesn't add up, you know?
And then you've got Netanyahu. He's always been saying that Iran is 5 years away from having a nuke, but he's been saying that forever.
Yeah, it's almost like a joke at this point, like the 5 years away thing. It never seems to actually happen.
So here's the main takeaway, right? We've got this super aggressive threat to like obliterate Iran over a nuclear deal, but they might not even be building a weapon. And all these predictions about their nuclear program have never come true.
It definitely makes you wonder if the stated goal of avoiding more war in the Middle East is actually what's going on.
I mean, how does threatening to destroy a country that might not even be developing nukes line up with avoiding war? It just doesn't make sense.
It seems like there might be something else going on.
Okay, so let's move on to Yemen.
Yeah.
Now, Dave Smith pointed out that Trump is still like totally backing Israel no matter what. And he's also kept up the bombing of the Houthis in Yemen, which actually started with Biden.
Right. And on the Liberty Report, Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams, they talked about how there have been way more airstrikes in Yemen. They even brought up this report by Dave DeCamp on antiwar.com that like breaks it all down.
Yeah, it's not just a few bombs here and there. It's like a huge increase.
It's a major military operation for sure.
And the way they talk about it is kind of crazy too. Like on Ron Paul Liberty Report, they played a clip of Trump saying the bombing has been very successful beyond our wildest expectations, and that he wants to keep it up for a long time.
I remember that. And they also had Pam Bondi on, and she was saying that the Yemen mission is like super successful in making the world safer. But then they talked about all the civilians that are getting killed.
Yeah, that's the really messed up part. Like Ron Paul Liberty Report brought up this thing where the White House supposedly like totally destroyed an apartment building in Yemen, and they said it was because some Houthi missile guy was visiting his girlfriend there.
Oh, man. And they said like dozens of civilians were killed.
It's just awful. And get this, they said the intel for the bombing came from Israel.
Wow, so we're bombing Yemen based on information from another country. That's pretty wild.
I know, right? And this is supposed to be about America first.
It just doesn't seem to line up with putting America first or with staying out of foreign conflicts.
So think about this, right? We're bombing Yemen, killing civilians, potentially, based on intel from Israel. How does that make America safer or help us avoid foreign conflicts? It doesn't seem to make much sense unless there's something else going on.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, Dave Smith brought up a really interesting point about all this. He said that Trump won the presidency twice because he promised to stop getting involved in these kinds of wars,
Yeah, he ran on a platform of like staying out of everyone else's business.
Exactly. And now he's doing the exact opposite.
Right. And Dave Smith said that Trump's base is like really divided over this stuff. They're not happy about supporting Israel unconditionally or bombing Yemen. And he even said that bombing Iran would be a political nightmare for Trump.
Makes sense. A lot of his voters probably wouldn't be too thrilled about that.
Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams brought up a poll that showed Trump's approval ratings going down. And they said it's because people are worried about the economy and they don't want more wars in Iran or Yemen or even getting more involved in Ukraine.
It's like everyone's tired of the endless wars.
Yeah, and it's like, why would Trump do this stuff when it's so unpopular? Why would he go back on his promises and risk losing his supporters?
It just doesn't make sense unless there's some other reason he's doing it.
Which brings us to the big question, is Israel calling the shots here? Dave Smith flat out said he's worried that the reason we might go to war with Iran is because they're an enemy of Israel.
Yeah, it's like he's saying that we're putting Israel's interests ahead of our own.
And then Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams, they brought up Netanyahu again. Remember how he always said Iraq had WMDs?
Wow.
Well, they think he's trying to do the same thing with Iran.
Oh, wow. You mean like trying to get the U.S. to fight his war for him?
Exactly. They even say it could be Netanyahu's dream to get the U.S. to fight its war against Iran.
And then you've got that whole thing about the Yemen bombing intel supposedly coming from Israel.
Yeah, it's starting to look like a pattern here.
It's making me think that maybe America first isn't actually the priority.
So the big question here is this. To what extent is Israel influencing U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East? And if they are pulling the strings, does that really put America first? It doesn't seem like it to me.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Okay, so let's recap everything we've talked about today. We've got Trump threatening to destroy Iran, even though our own intelligence says they might not be building a nuke. We've got the U.S. bombing Yemen based on info from Israel killing civilians. And looks like this might all be because Israel wants us to.
And it's like none of this aligns with the goals of avoiding new wars and putting America first. It's actually the opposite.
It really makes you wonder what's really going on here.
It's like there's a whole other story underneath the surface.
So here's a final question for you to think about. Given everything we've learned, what are the long-term consequences of all this? Like, what happens if the U.S. keeps putting Israel's interests ahead of its own? What does it mean for our role in the world? It's something we all need to be paying attention to because the choices we make today will have huge consequences down the road.
Definitely, these are the kinds of things that shape the future, you know?
So keep learning, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep thinking critically about what's really happening in the world.
That's how we make a difference.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was a pleasure being here today.
Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged because the world needs your voice.
Absolutely. We can't be passive observers, you know?
That's right. We need to be active participants in shaping our future.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, folks, we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Take care, everyone.